Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Satisfying Software. Today, I have with me Andrea Magnorsky. She is an independent consultant situated in New Zealand and creator of bite-sized architecture sessions. Hi, Andrea. Welcome. Why do you think that companies are bad at making decisions?
Ooh. I think I wonder if companies understand their decisions well enough to know if if they make good decisions or not. So basically, do if whether if I think they do a good decision or not. I think what I wonder more is like, do they realize and do they have a good track record, a good way to validate their intuition about uh, whether they make good decisions, especially the big ones. You would think that the process that the people have to go through to make those big decisions mean that at least they would know.
Hmm.
But what I find is that generally that's not what's happening. I think they want to. Sometimes they have big processes, but the real reasons for those decisions being made tend to either be lost in translation or something else is recorded if they do have a decision record process, or maybe the big part of the decision is broken down in a few decision records to the point that you can't see the wood from the trees. So I am more interested on how to track this trees of decisions. So I love your question. So yeah.
I have noticed like similar things in companies. Like sometimes they do have like frameworks in place for how to make decisions, and they sort of think like, hey, that's enough. Hey, we have a process, and we follow that process, and then we know we should have a good decision at the end of the day. And it was like, okay, but the process like guides you on a very small part of the decision, and actually the whole analyzing and generating options and they're just not there, or the problem is completely wrong. Like, the decision you're trying to make is great, but it's not going to solve your problem at all.
Yeah,
And
and doesn't it start at the problem? Actually, I find that when people start talking about decisions, there's by the time that you're engaging with someone, kind of go like, oh, we need to make a decision. You're like, cool. Where is it? Where do we talk? Where did we talk about the problem? And it's always, well, you know, John, Joanna, someone, they wrote down this 35-page document about it, and that's, and you're like, cool, that's great for them. Did we read it? No, just some basic questions. Uh, and there is this kind of sometimes trying to split up and delegate problems to be more efficient to the point that the whole aspect of and making sure that the understanding of the problem and the problem space, and then understanding of the potential options, like making those options, and then kind of go like, right, we're going to make a decision, and that is the decision. And it's not like I made a decision and then nobody knows about it and nobody implements it. So that means that the decision actually wasn't made. Like all those things come together and it makes it for very, very hard to, if I thought I did make a decision, but actually wasn't implemented. I maybe my mindset about what happened would be so different to the other people that the reality of the decision is very unclear depending on who you talk to. And then the truth lies in the software that is written only,
well,
that is understood by people that are far away from the decision making. So who has the truth?
it is, yeah. I think like communicating your decision afterwards, or at the very least sort of a summary of like making sure everyone is informed who needs to be informed, is also very lacking
Yeah.
uh there. Um and we have the architect decision records. Um but what I've noticed then, if I go to companies, is because they don't really know how to make a decision. There's no, like, they do have a process saying that, well, which type of decision do you have? But then that's sort of you can make this alone, or you have to make this in group, or like those type of frameworks are there. Um, but then like how do you analyze? How do you analyze the problem? How do you generate so there's nothing there for actually making that decision, for going through that process until you have one option left and you're going to implement that option, and then communicating that option. So even if you look at the ADRs, like there's nothing there that actually gives you any information that's valuable on what was the context, how did how did you make it.
Yeah, and there's the problem of, especially in bigger companies, you have the issues that sometimes people are told they're they're told you're using this decision making framework,
Mhm.
and the problem, it kind of starts going at which granularity do you document the process. So there's when you're talking about this, I think people are they find hard to engage consistently with a process that keeps changing, with teams that keeps changing, with where like there's too many moving goalposts, and it kind of sometimes feel like it's imposed. So what I've seen working when it comes to decision records is, um, instead of saying it's a process and here's the process, uh, good luck, which we probably all experience, or someone tells you, oh, by the way, from tomorrow you need to complete this form. This is the template from the ADR. I mean, it's quite simple, isn't it? So you need to do it. Uh, Not very helpful because again, you have granularity. You're like not sure about what aspects of your decision are you supposed to document. Sometimes you don't know everything. What I think actually working is that you introduce it as a process. You tell people that actually you don't write this document once. Like you're not sitting down, just writing it all down in like 10 minutes or whatever, and then it's done. That's the beginning of how things go wrong. So then you're gonna say, okay, you need to do a draft, put everything you know, maybe about the context, maybe put more details about pros and cons, put your question, ask for advice from people that are going to be affected by it, people that know about this decision. And then iterate. I think the advice forum or some sort of forum where people can interact with the document in a synchronous way can be very useful. But if that's not like available to you, at least discussing it offline and actually addressing the comments, and that a decision record can only be accepted. Again, some sort of process once all the comments have been addressed, or some way of knowing that is that does everyone understand what's here before we proceed, before the people that really matter in the decision kind of at least engage in some meaningful way with this. I think that can make a big difference. And then with all these people that learn through this process, that they add whatever is missing so the process works for them. I think that works. And then also you need to be clear about which granularity of decision. So a decision that is within a team, perhaps that needs to be documented by the team, but something that is more across multiple teams is going to be slightly different. And how is it going to be different? I mean, it could be similar, but still you need to do this socialization of the ideas, the pros and cons, and the expected outcomes. So timelines, just basically communicate and have some way of giving like actionable feedback loop. If you want to do something about this very specific part of a decision, this is what you need to do. If you're like, for anything, just talk to me. Like it's literally you're not, it's like asking someone, uh, you know, some generic question. People never give you feedback. Any feedback, not good. Any feedback about the third paragraph when it comes to when it's talking about the ducks. Oh, I hated the ducks. I don't.
Why?
I don't. But see that you go for something specific, you're more likely to get something meaningful.
Yeah, like when I go to companies, like one thing is that when I get is like even if the team is responsible for making a decision, and so they have the power to actually make that decision, but it is going to affect other teams, and so they do want input and feedback and say like, is this okay with what we have? And
Mm,
they say like, do you know, we never get any response to that. And I was like, okay, so what do you do? And they were like,
mm.
well, we sent them a link to the page that it's on and ask for feedback. And I was like, but that's nothing. Like, that's so vague. Like, we're going to make this decision. It's going to impact you. By the way, here's a link. And whenever you have time, just have a look at it. Like, of course, you're
Mm,
not getting feedback from the other teams. And
yeah,
probably along the way, when you then pick one, there are a whole bunch of things you didn't think about because the teams did not have a look at it. And it's like, have you noticed that as well? Like,
yeah.
if you try to do it
The
async, yeah.
this is kind of why I especially I think you can eventually get to more asynchronous processes because and you might get kind of resistance initially for people that prefer to work asynchronously because of either time zones or whatever, or just because maybe you have better control of your time. But I think when you're introducing a new practice, especially a communication practice, it's already lossy. You're already losing if you're like on a pre-established synchronous way of working or non-existing, and then you go to something that is like low friction, but also low, low response. You don't know what good looks like, and you don't have any framework to do it. So I found that synchronous first, evolving to okay, if people learn to engage like usefully with an ADR, or sometimes people prefer not to have decision breakers and prefers to have RFCs. I think whatever the document is called, I have less of a problem with than have you documented your decisions and do you have the feedback that you need? Like I think the template or name, or if they want to call it my company's decision record, it doesn't matter as long as there's a way to document the decisions and that there's sufficient context for the decision to be superseded. So I think the pros and the cons should. I think that's maybe a good way to kind of know if this is a good DR, or at least you can see them in the future. It should give you enough information that in 6 months you look at it and go like, oh, that's changed. Does that mean we need to review this? Um, so, and that doesn't mean that the documents need to be 10 pages long. It just means that the right content needs to go there, which kind of brings us to another topic, which is like writing a decision record. If you've never done it, is actually pretty hard, right? It's a short document, but the law of not, writing something concise and useful is actually pretty difficult. And, that takes time and people need to be having that time and doing it wrong a few times until they get better at it.
Yeah, that's true. Like the process I most of the time use means that at the end of everything, um, I can just pour all of that into the ADR because I use visualization techniques for pro con fix. Well, I use a pro con fix always. Yeah, and yeah, I have a few frameworks. And so basically, once we've gone through that process of decision making, um, all I just I can pour all that information in there, and I don't have to do that much extra work. It's still extra work. I mean, to make
Yeah,
it
but even if you if but even if you're doing some framework like the one you're talking about, going through learning the framework, doing the visualizations, I mean that takes time. So and that you're doing all of that in service of making a better decision, which makes sense. Still is time consuming, and also especially I think the more people you have involved in the decision making, the longer it tends to take. And I don't mean that involved because you included them, but actually involved. If you're affecting a lot of people, the decision generally will take longer to be implemented.
yeah, and I do notice that like one thing I've noticed is that people have difficulty seeing understanding the difference how the levels of how people should be involved. Like you have people, and you just like they have valuable information, and you need that in order to actually make a decision. Because they can help you make options, they can help you evaluate it. So you really need their input. You can't do without it. And then there are people who have some information, maybe not all that much. And sometimes they're just people who are going to be impacted and need to be informed, but not necessarily consulted. And
Yes.
so you have all
Yeah.
these different levels, and people say that I will just everyone has to be involved in the same way to make that decision. While you're like,
Yes.
well, no, like these people need to be informed after decision is made and see if they need anything to actually make it work. These people, well, they can very much asynchronously provide some input. And like these people really need to be there when you start doing this because they have all the information. And
Yeah, and also the I think if you involve the wrong stakeholders into a decision, it can massively derail decision making, like the actual output, depending on their personalities and the like. Let's say you involve the C something O, the CXO, and
the
it's just because yeah, exactly, you wanted to uh I don't know, you thought that it would help you with influence or whatever. And then they start talking about something that just derails the conversation. Or people are afraid of talking. Either could be good. Yeah, like they are like, oh, the CX, it doesn't matter what the in between goes. Oh, it's there. So they're like, oh, I better not say anything just in case I'm wrong. And then suddenly the discussions that need to happen are not happening just because maybe people don't want to say about how some work wasn't what it was supposed to be, or they don't want to be seen as underlying their colleagues, or and, we're humans. We all know the series of reasons that happen when a hippo turns up in a meeting, right? Um, and
what a
assuming that
hippo?
everyone, yeah, a hippo, like a highest paid person in the room or something.
Ah,
It's like
okay, yeah.
basically that's the acronym stands for something else, but basically the person with the biggest title turns up, and it kind of just shrinks the conversations, or just because they can all try to agree with this person or whatever. So there's definitely an effect, and the effect depends on the company. In most cases, people align with the hippo or they go quiet.
Yeah.
Either way is bad.
But also the hippo, sorry, my mind went to the animal when you said it at first. I thought you were something like an elephant in the room and something similar. Um, but the thing is also when the hippo, sometimes they feel pressure. Like I need to have an opinion on this. I need to
Yes.
provide input. People expect me here to have answers, and you're like, well, no, that's not the reason you're here. Mostly, you're just here because you need to be informed, which means you can cut them actually out of all of that and just send them an email afterwards.
Yeah.
Uh, there,
Yeah.
but I do
Yeah. I
like
think their position is quite hard. I think sometimes it's sometimes kind of hard to empathize with higher level of leaderships, but the reality is that they make a lot of decisions with just by the nature of the type of work they do. It's you're working with a lot of uncertainty, right? And some of their decisions are going to be made with that level of uncertainty. So if you involve them, they are used to making decisions with little certainty. So they will appear to be a lot more certain than they probably are compared to the rest of the room that is kind of wanting to validate their decisions a lot more, right?
yeah. And the case is also that like the outcome, and when will we start noticing it? Like for them, most of the decisions they make are like years before you can start evaluating it. Even like if you make architectural decisions, it takes years before you start seeing, did we do it, like did we make pick the right option here, did we go in the right direction, or should we shift? While if you're a software developer, it's like, well, I push to production, I actually see what my decisions, what happens with it, how does it work, and then I can adapt. So the sort of feedback loops that you have on decisions is very different. And like maybe as a software developer, someone was very good at making decisions, but then they move on to being an architect and more uncertainty and trying to find more ways to get earlier feedback, even though this is about years and not a week or a sprint or something. And you notice that, oh, they actually don't know how to make these type of decisions at all, like high
Yeah.
uncertainty.
Well, it is a hard and very different skill, right? One, when you're closer to the feedback loop, it's you can experiments can also be more meaningful because it's you're getting that clearly wrong, clearly right. Like you get strong signals where the signals could be that you just don't know how to read the signals, which is when it's like those longer lasting decisions. Like imagine some decision like moving towards event-driven architecture instead of APIs. You will see you can easily, depending on what metrics you're looking at, is kind of say, oh, EDA or event-driven architecture is the worst decision ever, or you can literally say the opposite. Depending, basically, if you're not seeing any high success or failure, you can probably tweak the metrics for giving you the wrong message if you don't know how to read it. So it's and also every company has a need for doing the type of decision. Now we're moving to event driven architecture. We want to we want to you know make sure that all the team can be autonomous and asynchronous. So we're gonna do everything event driven. And you're like, oh, what's your problem?
This is
Like,
it's not a It's why I talk
eh,
about message-driven architecture most of the time and no longer about event-driven architecture. Because that's another thing, right? Um, Maybe going to event-driven architecture was the right call. It's just
maybe.
that you have to execute it, and maybe the execution is wrong. And
There's that as well, but yeah, there's the difficulty of something that is actually hard to do and hard to do well with especially if a team doesn't have expertise in the area. There is also are we choosing the right metrics? Are we looking at the right signals? Which also I see generally overemphasize on the preferred option. So some group was decision A, decision B. Everyone liked A better. Suddenly, all their metrics are super like A, the best, but nothing is checking like not doing any negative testing to kind of validate that actually where is it going wrong? What who are we letting down? Who's paying for A doing so well? Because there's always a counterpart. And it happens that sometimes, like as you're saying, 2 years later, you find out actually A wasn't as good as we loved it for the first 6 months, but then it started being really, really painful, right? So,
yeah, and even if like somewhere in the feedback loop you're saying like something isn't right about this, then first you need to like did we pick the wrong option or are we executing it wrongly? So that's the first thing you have to start wondering. Um and that's already difficult. Um and then sort of when you are executing it wrongly and you don't have to change direction. Another thing is that they have very like especially event driven architecture, it's like they don't know how to correct course, and most of the new decisions they make sort of make the situation so much worse
yeah,
there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
what's that
because there's this kind of pendulum thing, you can see that a lot with solutions that help you store data on the messaging systems. They become basically a dumping ground, and I'm not going to name many names, but people just go into like, I know we just sent you just send the message and it lives there so we can query whenever, and you're like, so you're using this as a database, but you already also have a database, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so have you done a trade-off between these two ways of querying? No. I mean, that's the wrong, that's the short answer, but it's like there is this magical thinking about these new solutions, isn't it?
Yeah, they're silver bullets. They will solve all our problems, Andrea. You should know this by
Yes.
now.
It's yeah, it's but the thing I think it's kind of one of those things where you wind up um always coming back being a bit repetitive in the messaging, which is like at the end of the day, for any decision that you do make, you need to drill down and iterate. And so, if you're choosing one technology, the problem can be on the execution, of course. But at the end of the day, you need to kind of see, okay, we chose this, and this is exactly the specific flavor of, let's say, event-driven architecture that we're implementing, and this is the way we're treating messages, commands, etc. Like this is our common patterns, our guidelines, uh, and being iterative and means that you need to review how our guidelines are correct, not just best practice, but does it actually work for you? And also, you need to review the decision itself, the guideline, the training that people are getting, or how they're learning, and it's a lot of work. So when does that happen?
Yes. Yeah, never. Most of the time, the answer. It's also one of the reasons that I like your decision KP map so much. SOKP, knowledge power for the people who are listening. It
Yeah.
be-
So
oh,
actually, it's actually a double. It's called decision KP map, and the KP stands for two different things: is
mm,
knowledge power and key people.
ah, I didn't know the key
Ah,
people. I just because we have we sort of we look at who are the people in this decision that have the knowledge and who are the people who have the power. Mm, can be the same person. And what I've sometimes noticed is like when you have something like event driven architecture, because already picked like that,
yeah.
and it's like who has the knowledge? And it's like nobody. Like no one has experience in this topic. But it is the thing that's being picked. So it's an event driven architecture doesn't work, it's bad. But it's like, no, you just there was no knowledge. Like the knowledge was just absent on how to do this. Yeah, so that made it so much more difficult to actually execute this option that you picked. And of course, you're going to fail a hell of a lot more and do it wrong a hell of a lot more because you also have to learn while you're doing it.
But him, like we know each other from our F sharp days, so
Yes.
we've been there for the previous wave of functional programming, which actually had exactly the same problem. Like we had the same issue. I'm sure you faced it as much as I did. You turn up somewhere to some work, and either using F sharp or I was using Scala later in life. You turn up somewhere, and there isn't a lot of expertise in the room, and everyone is using that language and then you look at the code, and well, with time it got better, but especially the first few years, it was kind of like pretty wild, really. It's like you're like, what are you doing here? Oh no, we need some strange idea. I don't want to insert functional lingo into this just in case, but it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, oh, we're moving to this because we want the outcome without considering that the outcome would only come with people learning. And when is that happening? Iterating together to see what works. And then, you know, only then you get the some outcomes, and maybe it will be a mixed. It won't be the it will be more like like a little and then some other bits that I'm like, I have no idea what to do with all of this. But what I think it's like very strange how little we plan for the learning time. And then people are saying stuff like, we really care about engineering excellence. And it's like, cool. How much time are you getting people to learn? It's like, yeah, actually, they're spending 10% of their time in project A, uh, 80% of the time in project B, 75% of the time in project C. And I'm like, hey, that's more than 100%. It's like, oh yeah, yeah. And so people are switching context all the time between these different projects, and there is zero time for learning. and that's a fairly consistent pattern in some places.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also they're like, oh, we want our teams to be autonomous and in the we want them to learn. And I was like, okay, so what's the learning budget? It's like, what learning budget? It's like, yeah, like when they want to go to conferences or do workshops, like what's the budget? They don't have budget. Okay.
Or they have like a like in euros it would be like a 500 euro budget, or in here it would be like 1,000 or 1,200 New Zealand dollars budget. Which, by the way, if you're in New Zealand, that gets you to only local conferences, which there aren't many of. I mean, there's some really nice conferences, but there might not be about the thing that you actually need because, there's just not that many conferences. If you're in Europe, you can go to a conference, but you need to sleep somewhere because unless you're very lucky, the conference doesn't run in your town, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is so even like, and that's what you see, right? If you pick an option which there is no knowledge of, which is why I like the map, because then I can visually show them. Like right here, like we have someone who worked at it once 5 years ago. That's it. And sure, they had a good time and they loved it, but they had senior people who actually set up the thing, so it was quite correctly. Not that there wasn't any correction needed, but it was quite okay because those people had the experience. And so this whole top area there is just empty. And so something negative about picking this option is that there is no knowledge. A fix is we educate them and we give them budget and time to educate them. And then it's really visual in there that if you pick option A, hello, there's no knowledge. And hello, you're going to have to, give some money so that they can, or let them fail along the way. But most of the time, when people start changing their architecture, it's at a point where there's no room to fail anymore because it's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I love that. At first, I want to kind of talk a little bit about the your usage of the decision KP maps. I think I've been asking people to test this tool, and I generally say, for as a default, keep the like do the map for you. If you find that it's useful to share it with other people, then do it. But the mapping practice is actually the higher return. So the fact that you kind of do the map and you're like, is this person in this decision? It's like, oh no, they have a lot of capability to change things, but maybe they don't actually know. And I like to make a lot of emphasis when it comes to a map, that map is for one specific decision. It's not for a project.
Mm.
It's not for anything. It's like this decision, like one single decision. That's where you're gonna get more out of it, right? Because the same person, it's not about who has knowledge about everything. Like in this case, it's really obvious, right? It's like, okay, you need to know about event-driven architecture.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if you're trying to make a decision about, say, let's say it's a project that you and me work together, and uh, we have a team, and we're trying to decide between EDA or not, then we could see like, okay, Hien is here, she knows a lot about it, and Andres over here. Uh, who can make this decision? What do we need to make that a reality? Like, so do we understand the context of the decision? As in, would it make sense to implement it for if our project was creating website for cats? I mean, if it's just a plain website with pictures of cats, unless there's like millions of them, probably not. It's just gonna be, many pictures of cats, some HTML. Maybe it gets a bit fancier, but maybe it doesn't make sense. So knowing the context, knowing the target solution, we will rank high there for that decision. However, if we were deciding on something else, we could be like the worst people. I think people have quite static views on especially on power. So uh, it's funny how much power varies on a per decision basis. I saw that I asked people to test this map because I thought, oh, maybe it's just me, but I noticed that some people that worked in more hierarchical organizations were
Mhm.
less able to move their power per decision. However, in other types of more loose organizations where they realized that, oh, this person has less decision making power for this decision, and I thought that was very useful that both axes were um, moving around a lot, and also how it tracked over time, how the same decision you map again and again and again, you see stuff moving because people learn more, or actually you realize that we need the collaboration of someone else to make this decision happen. So we need to add someone to the pool, and suddenly the whole map kind of reshuffles because of this new person being added. So it's very useful.
Yeah, I really like that tool. Um, did you notice that when you have more loosely structured things, because I've tried it out, but there's more like static power structures in place there. Have you
Mm.
noticed that like the people who then have more power are also the people who have more knowledge if you have a more
And
loosely set up?
uh, no, no, not necessarily. It kind of I didn't see it as a pattern, if that's the question. Like in some cases, they one of the teams that I'm thinking about for this, they have just really good comms. Like if someone just didn't have any authority or whatever, but asked good questions, and that suddenly moved them, and they can make change happen just because they were insightful,
Hmm.
uh, and they didn't necessarily have a lot of context. They just were wise and experienced, I guess. But they didn't have context on the decision. However, because of the good questions, it moved them in the power access, or they can make change happen access because they asked the right questions at the right time.
Yeah,
So,
that's nice.
which again, really nice to see. It's like, oh, this is what healthy looks like.
I didn't know it existed.
It
Oh,
does. Yeah, no, it's out there. It's out there.
that's good. All right, so this brings us at the end of the podcast. I still have two questions left for you. So
Okay.
first, this is the section called "Rant Away." So what are you still frustrated about when it comes to decisions in companies?
Oh, okay. I've been thinking about this for a little while. So there are many things that are actually the concrete versions of it, but the the generic version of this rant is when you go to companies, or when you talk to people in general, most people want some sort of recipe to solve problems. At the same time, the same people want an extremely custom solution. So there's these two things that are extremely at odds with each other, which is you can't have a recipe for something very custom. And things that are customs, they cost more, right? If you go and buy a shoe that is made specifically for your shoe by an experienced person that makes shoes, it's going to cost you a lot more than if you go to, some place that you buy three flip flops for, some 10 euros or whatever. It's just you know so I guess, and you try to reframe the conversations generally to go like, well, what is your differentiator? Let's invest on that. But the will to find a silver bullet is so strong sometimes, and it's really hard to deter people, especially if you're trying to teach something. It's like, oh, but why isn't it simpler? And it's like, because we're dealing with highly complex, like you're dealing with complexity, like like literally the tagline of the book is about complexity. It shouldn't be like a surprise. Right? So you should assume and become comfortable with the discomfort is kind of like a tagline. So I guess that's my rant. These two things that are always at odds, that is, I think, quite common in our industry, and I kind of wish it feels like it would be native for years. And it's like, could we have a new thing that we we try? Like, didn't we learn already that these two things don't work together? Could we do the next step so that we learn some new stuff? So that's my rant.
All right. And then my last question is, what does satisfying software mean to you?
Satisfying software. So that's a harder question, I think. I like this question though. I think satisfying software is being able to trust, work somewhere. I think it's you build software in an environment where trust is truly the default. I worked in such environments sometimes, and I think you can build truly satisfying software when you work in those environments because um, people trust you, and in turn, you trust people to and trust that at a lot of levels. Trust that they know what they're doing. Trust that they know that you know what you're doing. Trust that if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna say, "I don't know how to deal with this," and that's okay, and it's not like a problem. So I think satisfying software means satisfying working with people that you trust and trust you.
All right. Thank you. That was a beautiful answer. Thank you for joining, and thank you everyone for tuning in again. And see you next week.
Thank you very much. It's been very, very fun. Thank you so much, Ian, and everyone making this happen.